Dr. Sarah Chen crouched beside the massive male lion, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The tranquilizer had done its work, but she could see the animal's labored breathing and the deep gashes across its flank, 3 parallel wounds that looked too precise, too clean to be from another predator. "Radio the base camp," she told her research assistant, Marcus. "Tell them we need the surgical kit and blood plasma substitute. This boy's lost a lot of blood." The Kenyan savanna stretched endlessly around them, golden grass swaying in the late afternoon breeze. Sarah had been tracking this particular lion for 6 months as part of her research on pride dynamics. But she'd never seen him injured like this. The wounds were strange, almost surgical in their precision. Marcus fumbled with the radio while Sarah examined the lion more closely. The big cat was magnificent, easily 400 pounds of pure muscle and power. His mane was dark and full, marking him as the dominant male of the local pride. But something else caught her attention. Around his neck, barely visible beneath the thick mane, was what looked like a collar. Not a research collar, those were bright and obvious. This was different, metallic, seamless, and it seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. "Dr. Chen," Marcus called, his voice tight with concern. "Base camp isn't responding. Actually, I'm not getting any signals at all. Radio's working fine, but it's like there's nothing out there." Sarah frowned, pressing her stethoscope to the lion's chest. "Strong heartbeat, but irregular. Keep trying. And see if you can get a cell signal." She carefully parted the mane around the strange collar, her breath catching as she got a closer look. The material was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Smooth as glass but warm to the touch, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in her peripheral vision. Definitely not made by any Earth technology she knew. "Dr. Chen," Marcus's voice cracked with panic. "Look at the sky." Sarah looked up and felt her world tilt. High above, so high it should have been invisible, 3 dark shapes hung motionless against the blue. They were enormous, easily the size of football stadiums, and they had no visible means of support. No wings, no rotors, no jets of flame. They simply existed in defiance of gravity. "What are those?" Marcus whispered. Before Sarah could answer, the lion beneath her hands shuddered and its eyes snapped open. But these weren't the golden eyes of a normal lion. They glowed with the same blue light as the collar, and when the great cat looked at her, Sarah felt an impossible sensation, as if something was touching her mind. "You helped me," a voice said inside her head, calm and deeply alien. "This is unexpected." Sarah should have scrambled backward, should have run. Instead, she found herself maintaining eye contact with the creature that was somehow both lion and something far more. "You're not from here," she said aloud, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "No, I am Keith Vera of the Zephyrian Collective. I was studying your species when the hunters found me. Your planet was supposed to be uninhabited." "Hunters?" Sarah's mind raced. The wounds, the ships overhead, the complete radio silence. "Who's hunting you?" The lion, Kethvara, struggled to its feet with obvious effort. The wounds were still bleeding, but the alien seemed to be fighting through the pain. "The Devourers. They consume worlds. Strip them of all life to fuel their expansion. My people sent scouts to find suitable worlds for evacuation. Your planet appeared empty of sentient life from orbit." "But it's not empty," Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. "We're here. Billions of us, yes, and now the Devourers know. They will not simply consume the planet. They will use your population as slave soldiers in their war against my people. Unless..." Marcus had been standing frozen during this impossible conversation. But now he found his voice. "Dr. Chen, are you talking to the lion? Because that's impossible, and also those things in the sky are getting bigger." Sarah looked up. He was right. The ships were descending, and she could make out smaller shapes detaching from them. Landing craft or drop pods heading for various points across the continent. "Your species surprises me," Kethvara continued. "When I was wounded, lost consciousness, and fell from the sky in this form, I expected to die. But you came. You helped, even though I am a predator that could kill you. Your people show compassion to other species without thought of reward. This is rare in the galaxy." "You fell from the sky?" Sarah asked, pieces clicking together. "You shapeshifted into a lion?" "It is our natural ability. We become what is needed to survive. But the wounds were too severe and I became trapped in this form. Your care has allowed me to regain enough strength to change back, but not enough to fight." The first of the landing craft struck the earth perhaps 10 miles away, and Sarah felt the ground tremble. Whatever was coming out of those ships, she had a feeling Earth's military wasn't going to be enough to stop it. "What do you need?" she asked, making a decision that would change everything. "Time. And your help. My ship is hidden nearby, but I'm too weak to reach it alone. If I can contact my people, warn them of what your species truly is, perhaps they will come to your aid." "What do you mean, what our species truly is?" Kethvara's alien eyes seemed to see right through her. "In all my travels across the galaxy, I have never encountered a species that would risk themselves to save a wounded predator they had never seen before. Your capacity for compassion extends beyond your own kind. The Devourers fear such species above all others." Sarah looked at Marcus, who was pale but determined. She thought of the billions of people across Earth who had no idea what was coming. And she thought of this wounded alien who had fallen into her world and trusted her enough to reveal the truth. "Marcus, help me get him to the rover. We're going to save more than just a lion today." As they carefully lifted the heavy animal, Sarah caught sight of movement on the horizon. Dark shapes were spreading across the landscape, and the air itself seemed to be growing colder. The nightmare was just beginning. But something told her that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology. It was their willingness to help a stranger, even when that stranger wore the face of their natural enemy. The rover bounced violently across the uneven terrain as Sarah pushed it to its limits. In the back, Kethvara lay unconscious again, the effort of communication having drained what little strength he'd recovered. Marcus gripped the dashboard, his eyes fixed on the growing number of dark shapes descending from the sky. "There," Kethvara's voice echoed weakly in Sarah's mind, "beyond the acacia grove. My ship is camouflaged, but you will see a shimmer in the air." Sarah steered toward the cluster of trees, her heart pounding as she spotted what looked like a heat mirage despite the cooling evening air. As they drew closer, the shimmer resolved into the outline of something impossible. A craft that seemed to bend light around itself, making it nearly invisible. "How is that even possible?" Marcus breathed. "Same way he can talk in my head, I guess," Sarah replied, bringing the rover to a stop near the shimmering outline. "Help me get him out." As they approached the camouflaged ship, its surface solidified into view, smooth, organic curves that seemed grown rather than built. A section of the hull flowed open like water, revealing an interior that glowed with soft blue light. "The medical bay," Kethvara directed as they carried him inside. "The alcove to your left." The ship's interior defied every expectation Sarah had about spacecraft. Instead of cold metal and harsh angles, everything curved and flowed. The walls seemed alive, pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns. The medical bay contained what was clearly some kind of healing pod, its surface molding itself to accept Kethvara's lion form. As the pod closed around him, the alien's mental voice grew stronger. "I must contact my fleet, but first you must understand what is happening to your world." The ship's main viewing screen activated, showing a global map marked with hundreds of red dots. Each dot was a landing site, and Sarah realized with growing horror that the invasion was worldwide. "My God," Marcus whispered. "They're everywhere. The Devourers do not invade worlds, they harvest them. Your government's weapons will not work against their shielding technology. They will capture your population centers, sort your people by genetic potential and psychological profiles, then modify the strongest to serve as soldiers in their endless war." "What about the rest?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Consumed. Their life force feeds the Devourers' technology and extends their lifespan. They have done this to thousands of worlds." On the screen, Sarah could see news feeds from around the globe. Military forces engaging strange insectoid creatures that seemed to absorb bullets and energy weapons without effect. Civilians fleeing from cities as massive harvesting machines descended from the sky. The world was ending, and it had only just begun. "But you said your people might help if they knew what humans were really like?" Sarah said desperately. "What did you mean?" The healing pod's glow intensified, and Kethvara's form began to shift and change. The lion shape blurred, stretched, and reformed into something vaguely humanoid but entirely alien. Tall, graceful, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift color like an octopus, his eyes remained that penetrating blue. In all the galaxy's known species, compassion is rare and always limited. Most beings care only for their own kind, and sometimes not even that. But humans, you saved me knowing I was a lion. A predator. An animal you had no biological connection to. This suggests something unprecedented. I don't understand what makes that so special. Kethvara approached the communications console, his movements fluid and purposeful. The Devourers fear only one thing, a species they call the Shepherds, beings who protect other life forms not for profit or alliance but from genuine care. Such species are incredibly dangerous to the Devourers because they inspire unity among their victims. The communication array came alive, sending out a signal that made Sarah's teeth ache. Images flashed on the screen. Kethvara's memories of countless worlds falling to the Devourers, civilizations that fought alone and died alone because no one else cared enough to help. If my people believe that humans are shepherds, they will do more than rescue you. They will unite our entire sector of the galaxy to make a stand here. And if they don't believe it, then they will assume you are simply another species to be mourned after the Devourers finish with you. The ship's sensors suddenly screamed an alarm. On the screen, Sarah saw something that made her blood freeze. A massive Devourer harvesting machine had landed near a village about 50 miles away. But worse, between them and the village, a pride of lions was being hunted by smaller Devourer scout units. "Those are my lions," Sarah said, recognizing the terrain. "The pride I've been studying." Marcus grabbed her arm. "Sarah, you can't possibly be thinking," but she was already moving toward the ship's exit. "If humans really are these shepherd things, then we need to prove it, right? Your people need to see what we're capable of. Dr. Chen, this is madness. Those machines will kill you. Maybe. But I've spent 3 years with those lions. I know every member of that pride, every cub, every hunting pattern. They're not just research subjects to me, they're—" She paused, searching for the right words. "They're under my protection." Kethvara stared at her for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. "You would risk your life for animals that are not even your own species, wouldn't you?" That is exactly what a shepherd would say. The alien moved to another console, his 4 hands dancing across controls that resembled living coral more than buttons. "I am uploading everything about your species' relationship with other life forms, your conservation efforts, your wildlife rehabilitation, your laws protecting endangered species. But actions speak louder than data." "What do you mean?" "I am broadcasting everything we do from this moment forward directly to my fleet commanders. They will see how you respond to this crisis. If you truly act as shepherds, they will come." "But Sarah Chen?" "Yes? If you die in this attempt, it may doom both our species. My people will assume humans are simply reckless rather than compassionate." Sarah looked at Marcus, then at the screen showing the lions being herded by alien machines toward certain death. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to let someone else deal with this impossible situation. But she thought of Casey, the pride matriarch who had let Sarah observe her cubs. Of Django, the young male who had lost his eye to a poacher's trap but still played with the juveniles. Of the dozen other lions who had become as real to her as any human friend. "Then I guess I better not die," she said, heading for the rover. "Are you coming, Marcus?" Her assistant looked terrified but determined. "Someone needs to document whatever insane thing you're about to do." As they left the ship, Kethvara's voice followed them. "Remember, Dr. Chen, you are not just saving lions today. You are deciding the fate of 2 civilizations." The weight of the galaxy settled on Sarah's shoulders as she drove toward the sound of alien weapons and the roaring of frightened cats. The scene that greeted Sarah as they crested the hill was like something from a nightmare. 6 metallic creatures, each the size of a small car, moved across the savannah with predatory grace. They resembled a twisted fusion of spider and mantis, their surfaces gleaming with an oily black sheen that seemed to absorb the evening light. Between them, the pride was trapped in a tightening circle. Kessie, the matriarch, stood at the center with 3 cubs pressed against her flanks. The other lions paced frantically, their roars of defiance echoing across the landscape. But Sarah could see the terror in their movements. These were creatures that had never encountered anything like the mechanical horrors surrounding them. "What's the plan?" Marcus asked, his voice tight as he filmed everything on his camera. Sarah studied the mechanical hunters through her binoculars. They moved with purpose but seemed more focused on herding than killing. "They're not trying to hurt the lions, they're gathering them. Probably for the same reason they're gathering humans." "Dr. Chen," Kethvara's voice reached her from the ship's communication system. "Those are harvester drones. They collect biological specimens for processing. The lions will be taken to the main harvesting facility." "Over my dead body," Sarah muttered, then caught herself. Poor choice of words. She grabbed her tranquilizer rifle from the rover's equipment rack. It was designed for lions, which meant it might at least slow down something mechanical. Maybe. Sarah, this is suicide. Marcus protested. Those things are armored machines and you've got a dart gun. The lions don't know that, she replied, checking her equipment belt. All they know is that something is threatening them and their cubs. That's where we come in. Without waiting for a response, Sarah started down the hill toward the confrontation. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands remained steady. 3 years of working with dangerous predators had taught her to manage fear, not eliminate it. The first harvester drone noticed her approach when she was about 100 yards away. It turned toward her with a mechanical whir, and Sarah got her first close look at its alien design. No visible eyes, but sensor arrays that glowed with the same malevolent red as the landing craft. Its front limbs ended in what looked like capture devices rather than weapons, but the sheer size of the thing was intimidating. Sarah raised her rifle and fired. The tranquilizer dart struck the drone's sensor array with a satisfying crack, and the machine stumbled backward, sparks flying from the impact point. The dart wouldn't do any real damage, but it had definitely gotten the thing's attention. "Hey!" she shouted, waving her arms. "Over here, you overgrown bugs!" 3 of the drones immediately turned toward her, their mechanical voices creating an alien chatter that made her skin crawl. But her distraction worked. The circle around the lions broke, and Casey immediately led her pride toward a rocky outcropping that would provide better defensive positions. The leading drone approached Sarah with surprising speed, its limbs making wet clicking sounds as they struck the ground. She fired again, this time aiming for what looked like a joint. The dart bounced off harmlessly, but the drone's hesitation gave her time to back toward a large baobab tree. "Dr. Chen, what are you doing?" Kethvara's voice carried a note of panic. "You cannot fight them directly." "I'm not fighting them," Sarah called back, circling the tree as the drone tried to corner her. "I'm giving the lions time to get to safety." But even as she said it, Sarah realized her plan had a fatal flaw. The other drones weren't pursuing her. They were regrouping to continue their hunt for the pride. And the lions, while temporarily safe behind the rocks, were still trapped. That's when she heard the roar. It wasn't Casey or any of her pride. This roar came from behind the drones, deep and challenging in a way that made the earth seem to vibrate. Sarah looked past her mechanical pursuer and saw something that made her heart skip. Django, the young male with the scarred eye, had circled around behind the drones. But he wasn't alone. With him were 2 other males from neighboring territories. Lions that should have been competitors, not allies. Yet here they were, moving in coordinated formation toward the mechanical invaders. "Impossible," Sarah breathed. Lions didn't form combat alliances across pride boundaries. It just didn't happen. But as she watched, the 3 males spread out and began their charge. Django leaped onto the back of the nearest drone, his claws finding purchase on the alien metal. The machine bucked and spun, trying to dislodge him. But the lion held on with grim determination. The other males hit their targets simultaneously, using their massive weight and powerful jaws to topple the mechanical creatures. The drone's limbs flailed wildly, but they seemed designed for capture, not combat against determined predators. "Remarkable," Kethvara's voice carried amazement. "The lions are defending you. This is unprecedented behavior." Sarah didn't have time to process the implications because her own pursuer had finally cornered her against the baobab tree. The drone's capture limbs extended toward her, energy crackling between its appendages. But instead of paralyzing her, the energy field seemed to make her skin tingle with strange sensations. "Sarah," Marcus's voice carried across the battlefield. "The big machine. It's coming!" She looked toward the village and felt her blood turn to ice. The massive harvesting machine she'd seen on Kethvara's screen was moving toward them, its bulk blotting out a significant portion of the horizon. It moved slowly but with terrible inevitability, leaving a trail of stripped earth in its wake. The drone in front of her suddenly stopped its advance, its sensor array tilting upward as if receiving new orders. Then, without warning, all 6 machines began retreating toward the approaching harvester. "They're pulling back," Sarah called to Marcus. "Why are they pulling back?" "Because the harvester has detected something that concerns them," Kethvara replied. "Dr. Chen, look at the lions." Sarah turned toward the rocky outcropping where Casey and her pride had taken shelter. What she saw defied every piece of training she'd ever received about animal behavior. The pride wasn't hiding anymore. They had emerged from the rocks and were standing in a defensive line facing the approaching harvester. But they weren't alone. More lions were arriving from all directions, males and females from different territories, all converging on this single point. "They're forming a coalition," Sarah whispered in disbelief. "Multiple prides working together. This is what my people need to see," Kethvara said urgently. "The lions are not defending territory or cubs. They are defending you. The human who protected them is now being protected in return. This is the behavior of a shepherd species, inspiring others to transcend their own nature." On the ship's communication array, lights began flashing in sequences Sarah didn't understand. But Kethvara's excitement was palpable through their mental link. The fleet commanders are seeing this. They are debating. Some believe this could be coincidence, but others are beginning to understand. The massive harvester was now only a mile away, and Sarah could see its true horror. Hundreds of smaller mechanical arms writhed along its surface, designed to strip away everything living in its path. The very air around it seemed to shimmer with destructive energy. But between that machine and the village stood a growing alliance of lions, natural enemies united by something that transcended instinct. And at the center of it all stood one human woman with a tranquilizer rifle and an impossible amount of hope. "Whatever we're going to do," Sarah called to the ship, "we better do it soon. That thing will be here in 10 minutes. And I'm pretty sure good intentions won't stop it." The response came not from Kethvara but from Marcus, who was pointing at the sky with shaking hands. "Sarah, look up. Something's happening." High above the battlefield, reality seemed to twist and bend as massive shapes materialized out of nothing. Ships, if they could be called ships, that dwarfed even the Devourer vessels appeared in the atmosphere. Their hulls shifted and flowed like living things, covered in the same bioluminescent patterns as Kethvara's scoutcraft. The fleet, Kethvara's mental voice carried a mixture of relief and concern. "They have come, but they are still deciding whether to intervene directly." "What do you mean deciding?" Sarah demanded, keeping her eyes on the approaching harvester while the lions continued to gather around her position. The coalition now numbered nearly 30 animals, an impossible gathering that should have resulted in territorial warfare, not unified defense. "My people do not interfere in the affairs of primitive species unless those species prove they are worth saving. They are monitoring this situation to determine if humans truly possess shepherd qualities, or if this is simply an anomaly." The harvester was close enough now that Sarah could feel the vibration of its passage through the ground. Its surface writhed with mechanical appendages, each one designed for a specific aspect of biological collection and processing. At its front, a massive energy field glowed with hungry intensity, ready to strip the life from everything in its path. But something strange was happening. The field flickered, its energy patterns becoming unstable. Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could see streams of data flowing between the Zephyrian fleet and the Devourer vessels. "They are jamming the harvester's systems," Kethvara explained. "But only partially. They want to see how you respond when faced with a weakened but still deadly threat." "Great," Sarah muttered. "A test." Django approached her position, his scarred face calm despite the approaching mechanical horror. The young male had always been braver than was probably good for him, but now he seemed to radiate a confidence that spread to the other lions. Casey joined him, her maternal instincts extending far beyond her own cubs to encompass the entire coalition. Sarah looked at the lions surrounding her, then at the harvester bearing down on them, and made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of retreat, she walked forward, placing herself directly between the coalition and the machine. "What are you doing?" Marcus called from his filming position behind a termite mound. "Something stupid, probably," Sarah replied, but as she raised her hands toward the harvester, she felt something she'd never experienced before. A sense of connection not just to the lions but to every living thing in the area, the grass beneath her feet, the acacia trees, the countless insects and small mammals that called this place home. The harvester's main processing beam lanced out, striking the ground in front of her. Where it hit, the earth turned gray and lifeless, all organic matter instantly drained away. But the beam faltered after only a few seconds, the Zephyrian jamming causing it to stutter and fail. Behind her, Sarah heard something that made her heart swell with impossible pride. The lions were not roaring in fear or aggression. They were making sounds she'd never heard before, low, harmonious calls that seemed to blend together into something almost like singing. Remarkable, Kethvara breathed. Dr. Chen, are you aware that you are doing something that should be biologically impossible? What do you mean? You are somehow coordinating the behavioral responses of over 30 apex predators. They are not following you as a pack leader. They are harmonizing with you as equals in defense of their shared territory. The harvester lurched forward again, its secondary systems coming online to compensate for the jamming. But now something else was happening. From the village beyond, Sarah could see people emerging, not fleeing, but moving toward the confrontation with vehicles and makeshift weapons. Leading them was Dr. Amara Okafor, the local veterinarian who had worked with Sarah on several conservation projects. Behind her came park rangers, local farmers, even children carrying nothing more dangerous than sticks and stones. They shouldn't have been able to threaten a machine designed to harvest entire worlds, but they came anyway. Sarah, Dr. Okafor called as her convoy reached the edge of the confrontation. We saw what was happening on the emergency broadcasts. We're here to help. It's too dangerous, Sarah called back. This thing will kill you all. Maybe, Amara replied, climbing out of her jeep with a bag of veterinary supplies. But we've all seen what you've done for the wildlife here. If you're making a stand, then so are we. The harvester's sensors focused on the growing crowd of humans and lions standing together in defiance. Its mechanical voice crackled across multiple frequencies, and Sarah realized it was trying to communicate. Translation incoming, Kethvara announced. The harvester is confused. It cannot categorize this behavior pattern. Humans and predatory animals do not form defensive alliances. This violates its understanding of biological hierarchies. Good, Sarah said grimly. Let's confuse it some more. She walked directly toward the massive machine, her hand still raised but now carrying her medical kit. Behind her, the coalition of lions followed, their movements synchronized with hers. The humans from the village spread out to form a protective line, not in front of the lions, but alongside them. The harvester's beam fired again, but this time it struck the ground harmlessly to one side. The machine seemed to be hesitating, its programming unable to process the scenario unfolding before it. Dr. Chen, Kethvara's voice carried urgency. The fleet commanders are in heated debate. Some believe this proves humanity's shepherd nature, but others argue that you are simply reckless rather than compassionate. What would convince them? Show them that your compassion extends even to your enemies. The harvester lurched forward one final time, bringing its full bulk to bear. But as it did, something catastrophic happened to its systems. Overloaded by the Zephyrian jamming and its own confusion, the machine began to collapse. Its anti-grav generators failed, and hundreds of tons of alien technology came crashing down toward the defenders. Sarah saw it happening and knew that several lions were directly in the impact zone. Django, Casey, and at least 6 others would be crushed. Without thinking, she sprinted toward them, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Move! Everyone move!" The humans scattered immediately, but the lions seemed frozen by the sight of the falling machine. Sarah reached Django first, throwing her full weight against his flank to push him clear. Casey needed no encouragement once she saw the danger to the other lions, and began herding them toward safety with urgent vocalizations. But Sarah realized with crystal clarity that she wouldn't make it out herself. The harvester's bulk was too large, falling too fast. She had saved the lions, saved the humans, but there wasn't time to save herself. The last thing she saw before the machine struck was a brilliant blue light erupting from the sky, and Kethvara's voice screaming her name. Sarah! The impact shook the earth like an earthquake, throwing up a cloud of dust and debris that blocked out the sun. When it settled, the harvester lay in ruins, its technology dark and lifeless. But where Sarah had been standing, there was only empty ground and the smell of ozone. High above, the Zephyrian fleet hung motionless in the sky, their deliberations suddenly taking on a much more urgent tone. And in his ship, Kethvara felt something he had never experienced before: the need to save a single life, regardless of the consequences to the greater galaxy. The test was over. Now came the real challenge. Sarah awakened to the sensation of breathing liquid that somehow provided more oxygen than air ever had. Her eyes opened to find herself suspended in a healing pod, similar to the one that had restored Kethvara, but larger and more sophisticated. Through the transparent walls, She could see the interior of what was clearly a much larger ship than the scout vessel. "Be still," a new voice spoke in her mind, deeper and more ancient than Kethvara's. "The emergency transport caused significant trauma to your cellular structure. You are fortunate to be alive. Did the lions—" Sarah began, then found she could speak normally despite being submerged in the healing fluid. "All survived, as did the humans from your village." The harvester's destruction sent a clear message to the devourer forces. This world is no longer undefended. The pod began to drain, and Sarah felt gravity return as she stood on unsteady legs. An opening appeared in the wall, revealing a corridor that curved away in both directions, its walls alive with the same bioluminescent patterns she'd seen on Kethvara's ship. Kethvara himself appeared at the doorway, but he was no longer alone. Behind him stood 3 other Zephyrians, their forms subtly different from his. One smaller and more delicate, another broader with additional arms, and a third whose skin patterns shifted constantly like living art. "These are Fleet Commander Yuraseth, Science Director Vel Quantum, and Cultural Analyst Bryn Kala," Kethvara introduced them. "They have been observing your species' response to the crisis." Commander Yuraseth stepped forward, her mental voice carrying the weight of authority. "Dr. Sarah Chen, your actions have created a significant debate within our collective. Some believe you have proven that humans possess true shepherd qualities. Others maintain that you are simply a reckless species with suicidal tendencies. What's the difference?" Sarah asked, accepting the clothing that materialized from the ship's walls, a simple jumpsuit that adjusted itself to her size. Science Director Vel Quantum responded, his 4 hands gesturing as he spoke. "Shepherds act with calculated compassion. They understand the risks but choose to protect other species because they recognize the interconnected nature of all life. Reckless species act on emotion without understanding consequences. And which do you think we are?" That cultural analyst Bryn Kala interjected, her patterns shifting to what Sarah somehow recognized as amusement. "Is what we are here to determine. Your rescue of Kethvara could be attributed to professional duty. Your defense of the lions could be territorial protection. But your sacrifice," Commander Yuraseth completed the thought. "You threw yourself into certain death to save predators that posed no genetic or social benefit to you. This behavior pattern has been observed in only 2 other species in galactic history. What happened to those species? They became the foundations of the greatest interstellar alliances ever known. But first, Dr. Chen, you must understand what you have set in motion." The corridor led to what could only be described as a command center, though it looked more like the inside of a vast organism than a traditional bridge. Screens of living tissue displayed images from across Earth, and what Sarah saw made her heart sink. The Devourer invasion had escalated dramatically. Major cities worldwide showed signs of the geometric harvesting machines, their populations being systematically sorted and processed. But something else was happening too, something the aliens hadn't expected. "Is that—" Sarah stared at one of the screens, showing footage from New York Central Park. "Yes, humans are forming protective alliances with the animal populations. In your urban centers, parks, zoos, even stray animals are being integrated into defensive coalitions." The footage was incredible. In Central Park, humans had somehow convinced the resident wildlife to work with them in coordinated resistance against devourer collection teams. Police horses, zoo animals, even pigeons and rats seemed to be participating in planned defensive actions. "This behavior is spreading globally," Vel Quantum explained. "Your species appears capable of cross-species communication and coordination that should be biologically impossible. But how? We don't have telepathic abilities like you do." Bryn Kala's pattern shifted to what Sarah was learning to read as excitement. "You do not need telepathy when you have something far more powerful. Empathy so profound that other species respond to it instinctively. You make them feel safe enough to transcend their base programming." Commander Yuraseth manipulated the displays to show views of the larger galaxy. "This is why the Devourers fear shepherd species above all others. They cannot harvest worlds where multiple species fight in coordinated defense. Their technology depends on biological isolation and fear." Sarah studied the galactic map, noting the vast swaths of empty space marked with skull-like symbols. "How many worlds have they taken? Over the past 10,000 of your years? Approximately 47,000 inhabited planets." The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. Billions upon billions of sentient beings, reduced to energy sources for an expanding plague of mechanical horror. But their expansion has slowed in recent centuries, Kethvara added. The remaining free species have grown more cautious, more defensive. They form temporary alliances when necessary, but true unity remains rare. What about your people? Why haven't you stopped them? Commander Yeriseth's mental voice carried deep sadness, because we also failed to recognize the value of shepherd species. When the Devourers first encountered the Gardeners of Vega 7, we assumed it was simply another conquest. We did not understand what we were losing until it was too late. The Gardeners, Velquantum explained, had formed alliances with over 400 different species on their world. When the Devourers attacked, the entire ecosystem fought as one organism. It took the Devourers 3 years to break them, and the cost was so high that they changed their entire strategy. They started targeting shepherd species first. Sarah realized exactly, which is why your world was supposed to be safely harvested without resistance. Your technology level suggested a standard predator species with typical territorial behaviors. Bryn Kayla moved to another display, showing the current state of the Earth invasion. But your actions have triggered something unprecedented. The Devourers are encountering organized resistance on every continent, and their harvesting efficiency has dropped by 73%. That's good, right? It is also why they have called for reinforcements, Commander Yeriseth said grimly. 3 entire Devourer fleets are converging on your solar system. They intend to completely strip your world rather than risk allowing a new shepherd species to spread their influence. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders again. So what can we do? That depends, the commander replied, on whether you can prove to the Galactic Collective that humanity deserves to survive. We have called for a convergence, a gathering of all free species to witness your species' first formal test as potential shepherds. What kind of test? Kethvara stepped forward, his alien features somehow managing to convey both hope and concern. You must return to Earth and unite not just your own species, but every form of life on your planet into a single defensive force. If you succeed, the collective will recognize humanity as shepherds and commit to your defense. If you fail, the Devourers win, Sarah finished. Worse, the collective will quarantine your solar system to prevent the spread of what they will consider a dangerous evolutionary anomaly. Sarah looked around at the alien, beings who had become humanity's unlikely allies, then at the screen showing her homeworld under siege. Somewhere down there, Django and Kesey and all the other lions were probably still wondering what had happened to the strange human who had stood with them against impossible odds. When do we start? The return to Earth was unlike anything Sarah could have imagined. Instead of Kethvara's small scout ship, she found herself aboard a massive Zephyrian vessel that served as both transport and mobile command center. Through its biological hull, she could see dozens of other ships from across the galaxy converging on Earth's solar system. Representatives of the Galactic Collective come to witness humanity's trial. The test begins at dawn, Commander Yeriseth explained as they approached Earth's atmosphere. You have 12 of your hours to demonstrate that your species can unite all life on your planet into a coordinated defense against the Devourer reinforcements. Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could see the 3 massive Devourer fleets positioning themselves beyond the moon's orbit. Each fleet contained hundreds of ships, including harvesting machines large enough to strip continents bare in a matter of hours. Dr. Chen, Velquantum approached with data streams flowing around his 4 hands. We have been monitoring the spontaneous alliances forming across your world. The patterns are unprecedented. The display showed her planet in a way she'd never seen before. Instead of political boundaries, the maps highlighted biological networks that spanned continents. Migration routes had become communication highways, with different species passing information about Devourer movements with remarkable efficiency. How is this possible? Sarah asked, watching footage of elephants in Kenya somehow coordinating with wolves in Yellowstone through a chain of animals that stretched across the Atlantic. Your species has unconsciously activated something we call the resonance, Bryn Kayla explained, her color patterns shifting to indicate deep thought. It is a theoretical state where one species' empathic field becomes so powerful that it creates a planet-wide network of cooperative consciousness. You mean we're telepathically connected to every animal on Earth? Not telepathically, empathically. Your emotional commitment to protecting other species has created a feedback loop. The more you care, the more they trust. The more they trust, the more you care. It has reached a critical mass. Kethvara approached Sarah with what looked like a living piece of technology, a biomechanical device that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. This is a resonance amplifier. It will allow you to coordinate the global defensive network, but using it will link your consciousness directly to every living thing on your planet. What does that mean? It means you will feel every death, every injury, every moment of fear or pain experienced by any creature in the defensive network. The mental strain has destroyed the minds of previous Shepherd candidates. Sarah took the device, surprised by how warm it felt in her hands. What happens if I refuse? Commander Uriseth's mental voice was gentle but firm. Then the collective will assume that humans are not true shepherds and your world will be quarantined. The devourers will complete their harvest, and humanity will join the 47,000 other species that were deemed unworthy of preservation. The ship began its descent toward the African savanna where this had all begun. Below, Sarah could see the impossible sight of humans and animals working together to construct defensive positions. Lions and zebras moving in coordination, elephants following human direction, even birds serving as aerial scouts and communication relays. Marcus Johnson has become something of a celebrity, Bryn Kayla informed her with amusement. His documentation of your initial encounter with Kethvara has inspired similar human-animal partnerships across the globe. Marcus is still alive? Very much so. He has been organizing the local defensive coalition while awaiting your return. As they landed, Sarah was greeted by a sight that made her heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. The savannah had been transformed into a massive staging area, where hundreds of humans worked alongside thousands of animals. Park rangers coordinated with elephant matriarchs. Veterinarians treated both human and animal injuries, and children played games that somehow helped train young animals for their roles in the defense. At the center of it all stood Marcus, looking exhausted but determined as he consulted with Dr. Okafor and what appeared to be a council of animal leaders. When he saw Sarah approaching, his relief was visible from 100 yards away. Sarah, thank God you're alive. We've been holding things together, but we need someone who can coordinate on a global scale. Global scale? Sarah looked around at the organized chaos surrounding them. How many people are involved in this? According to the reports we're getting, approximately 3 billion humans and counting. Every major zoo, wildlife preserve, and conservation area on the planet has become a coordination center. Even urban areas are joining in. Pets, strays, park animals, everything. Dr. Okafor approached with a tablet showing status reports from around the world. The military doesn't quite know what to make of us yet, but they've stopped trying to interfere. Especially after they saw what happened in Australia. What happened in Australia? Marcus grinned tiredly. The Devourers sent a harvesting fleet to Sydney. They weren't expecting to encounter coordinated resistance from humans, dingoes, kangaroos, and every venomous creature on the continent working together. The fleet withdrew after losing 6 ships. Sarah felt the resonance amplifier grow warm in her hands as she processed this information. Around the world, billions of minds were waiting for coordination, for someone to help them understand how to fight an enemy beyond their comprehension. Dr. Chen, Commander Uriseth's voice carried urgency. The test is beginning. The Devourer fleets are moving into position for their final assault. You must activate the amplifier now or your world will be lost. Sarah looked at the device, then at the faces around her, human and animal alike, all waiting for her to lead them into a battle that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy's understanding of what species deserve to survive. If I do this and it works, what then? Then humanity becomes the first new shepherd species in galactic history. Your influence will spread to other worlds, other species. The Devourer's expansion will finally face coordinated resistance across multiple systems. And if it doesn't work? Kethvara stepped forward, his alien features somehow conveying the depth of friendship that had formed between them. Then I will personally ensure that your sacrifice is remembered across the galaxy. Other species will know that on a small world called Earth, a woman named Sarah Chen chose to link her mind to every living thing on her planet, rather than let them face extinction alone. Sarah looked up at the sky, where the lights of ships from across the galaxy waited to judge her species. She thought of Django and Casey, of the lions who had stood with her against impossible odds. She thought of the elephants and wolves and countless other creatures who were trusting humanity to lead them in this final battle. The resonance amplifier pulsed in her hands, warm and alive and waiting. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's show them what shepherds can do." As she activated the device, Sarah's consciousness exploded outward, connecting her to every beating heart, every frightened mind, every creature great and small that called Earth home. The sensation was overwhelming. Millions of perspectives flooding her awareness. A symphony of life that threatened to drown her individual identity. But somehow, instead of being lost in the chaos, Sarah found herself becoming something more. Not just human, but a focal point for the planet's entire biosphere. Through her, the global defensive network began to coordinate with a precision that defied every law of biology and behavior. The real test was about to begin. The return to Earth was unlike anything Sarah could have imagined. Instead of Kethvara's small scout ship, she found herself aboard a massive Zephyrian vessel that served as both transport and mobile command center. Through its biological hull, she could see dozens of other ships from across the galaxy converging on Earth's solar system. Representatives of the Galactic Collective come to witness humanity's trial. "The test begins at dawn," Commander Yiraseth explained as they approached Earth's atmosphere. "You have 12 of your hours to demonstrate that your species can unite all life on your planet into a coordinated defense against the Devourer reinforcements." Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could see the 3 massive Devourer fleets positioning themselves beyond the moon's orbit. Each fleet contained hundreds of ships, including harvesting machines large enough to strip continents bare in a matter of hours. Dr. Chen, Vel Quantum approached with data streams flowing around his 4 hands. "We have been monitoring the spontaneous alliances forming across your world. The patterns are unprecedented." The displays showed her planet in a way she'd never seen before. Instead of political boundaries, the maps highlighted biological networks that spanned continents. Migration routes had become communication highways, with different species passing information about devourer movements with remarkable efficiency. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked, watching footage of elephants in Kenya somehow coordinating with wolves in Yellowstone through a chain of animals that stretched across the Atlantic. "Your species has unconsciously activated something we call the resonance," Brinkala explained, her color patterns shifting to indicate deep thought. "It is a theoretical state where one species' empathic field becomes so powerful that it creates a planet-wide network of cooperative consciousness." "You mean we're telepathically connected to every animal on Earth?" "Not telepathically, empathically. Your emotional commitment to protecting other species has created a feedback loop. The more you care, the more they trust. The more they trust, the more you care. It has reached a critical mass." Kethvara approached Sarah with what looked like a living piece of technology, a biomechanical device that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "This is a resonance amplifier. It will allow you to coordinate the global defensive network, but using it will link your consciousness directly to every living thing on your planet." "What does that mean?" "It means you will feel every death, every injury, every moment of fear or pain experienced by any creature in the defensive network. The mental strain has destroyed the minds of previous shepherd candidates." Sarah took the device, surprised by how warm it felt in her hands. "What happens if I refuse?" Commander Yiraseth's mental voice was gentle but firm. "Then the collective will assume that humans are not true shepherds, and your world will be quarantined. The Devourers will complete their harvest, and humanity will join the 47,000 other species that were deemed unworthy of preservation." The ship began its descent toward the African savanna, where this had all begun. Below, Sarah could see the impossible sight of humans and animals working together to construct defensive positions, lions and zebras moving in coordination, elephants following human direction, even birds serving as aerial scouts and communication relays. "Marcus Johnson has become something of a celebrity," Bryn Kayla informed her with amusement. "His documentation of your initial encounter with Kethvara has inspired similar human-animal partnerships across the globe." "Marcus is still alive?" "Very much so. He has been organizing the local defensive coalition while awaiting your return." As they landed, Sarah was greeted by a sight that made her heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. The savannah had been transformed into a massive staging area, where hundreds of humans worked alongside thousands of animals. Park rangers coordinated with elephant matriarchs. Veterinarians treated both human and animal injuries. and children played games that somehow helped train young animals for their roles in the defense. At the center of it all stood Marcus, looking exhausted but determined as he consulted with Dr. Okafor and what appeared to be a council of animal leaders. When he saw Sarah approaching, his relief was visible from 100 yards away. "Sarah, thank God you're alive. We've been holding things together, but we need someone who can coordinate on a global scale." Global scale? Sarah looked around at the organized chaos surrounding them. "How many people are involved in this?" "According to the reports we're getting, approximately 3 billion humans and counting. Every major zoo, wildlife preserve, and conservation area on the planet has become a coordination center. Even urban areas are joining in, pets, strays, park animals, everything." Dr. Okafor approached with a tablet showing status reports from around the world. "The military doesn't quite know what to make of us yet, but they've stopped trying to interfere. Especially after they saw what happened in Australia." "What happened in Australia?" Marcus grinned tiredly. "The Devourers sent a harvesting fleet to Sydney. They weren't expecting to encounter coordinated resistance from humans, dingoes, kangaroos, and every venomous creature on the continent working together. The fleet withdrew after losing 6 ships." Sarah felt the resonance amplifier grow warm in her hands as she processed this information. Around the world, billions of minds were waiting for coordination, for someone to help them understand how to fight an enemy beyond their comprehension. "Dr. Chen," Commander Yiraseth's voice carried urgency, "the test is beginning. The Devourer fleets are moving into position for their final assault. You must activate the amplifier now or your world will be lost." Sarah looked at the device, then at the faces around her, human and animal alike, all waiting for her to lead them into a battle that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy's understanding of what species deserve to survive. "If I do this and it works, what then? Then humanity becomes the first new shepherd species in galactic history. Your influence will spread to other worlds, other species. The Devourer's expansion will finally face coordinated resistance across multiple systems. And if it doesn't work?" Kethvara stepped forward, his alien features somehow conveying the depth of friendship that had formed between them. "Then I will personally ensure that your sacrifice is remembered across the galaxy. Other species will know that on a small world called Earth, a woman named Sarah Chen chose to link her mind to every living thing on her planet, rather than let them face extinction alone." Sarah looked up at the sky, where the lights of ships from across the galaxy waited to judge her species. She thought of Django and Casey, of the lions who had stood with her against impossible odds. She thought of the elephants and wolves and countless other creatures who were trusting humanity to lead them in this final battle. The resonance amplifier pulsed in her hands, warm and alive and waiting. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's show them what shepherds can do." As she activated the device, Sarah's consciousness exploded outward, connecting her to every beating heart, every frightened mind, every creature great and small that called Earth home. The sensation was overwhelming, millions of perspectives flooding her awareness, a symphony of life that threatened to drown her individual identity. But somehow, instead of being lost in the chaos, Sarah found herself becoming something more. Not just human, but a focal point for the planet's entire biosphere. Through her, the global defensive network began to coordinate with a precision that defied every law of biology and behavior. The real test was about to begin.